Didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just stood in the parking lot of a Marriott in Austin, Texas, staring at a video my coworker sent me, watching my brother gut the studio I'd spent 4 years building, and I said nothing. I let it happen. And that's the part people don't understand when I tell this story. They want me to say I panicked, that I screamed, that I drove 8 hours through the night to stop him. But I didn't. Because by the time that video hit my phone, my plan was already in motion. Every piece was already in place. All I had to do was wait. My name is not important. What's important is that I was 31 years old, I had built something real, and my brother thought he could take it, because he always had before. Let me explain what I mean by that. I'm the oldest. My brother is 4 years younger, and from the time he was about 7 years old, my parents decided he was the one with potential. I know how that sounds. Bitter, dramatic, the oldest child playing victim. I used to think that too. I used to tell myself I was imagining it. Then I started keeping a list. My high school graduation gift was a card with $40 in it. My brother's was a used car. My college tuition was loans I took out myself, starting at 18. My brother's first 2 years were paid by my parents, and when they ran out of money, they asked me to help cover the rest. I was 23. I had just started my first real job. I said yes, because that's what you do. I paid $11,400 over 18 months, so my brother could finish his business degree. He never said thank you. Not once. My mother called it the family helping each other out. I noticed she never used that phrase when the help was flowing in my direction. After college, my brother bounced. He had 4 jobs in 5 years, none of which lasted more than 8 months. Every time one fell through, my parents would call me. Every time there was a reason. The manager was unfair, the company was toxic, the pay wasn't right. Every time I would transfer money because I loved my parents and because saying no felt like abandoning them. I told myself it was temporary. It was never temporary. Meanwhile, I was building something. I had gotten my certification in interior design at night, while working full-time at an architecture firm during the day. I saved for 3 years. I found a commercial space in a building in East Nashville that had been a haberdashery in the 1940s 14-foot ceilings. Original hardwood floors, the bones of something incredible. I signed a 5-year lease in the spring of 2021, and I turned it into a design studio. Clean lines, warm light, a sample library that took me 6 months to curate. I named it after the street it was on. It was mine, completely and entirely mine, and I had not taken a single dollar from anyone to build it. The studio grew. By year 2, I had 2 employees, a junior designer named Zoe and an office manager named Pete, who had been with me since month 4, and who knew my scheduling system better than I did. We did residential projects mostly, a few commercial ones. I was not famous. I was not written up in Architectural Digest. But I was profitable, I was growing, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was standing on ground I had built myself. Then my brother's latest venture collapsed. He had been trying to open a fitness studio, not a gym, he was very specific about this distinction, for about a year. He had a business partner, some guy he'd known since college, and together they'd been developing the concept for long enough that I'd stopped asking about it. In February of last year, the partnership dissolved. I got the call from my mother on a Tuesday evening. She was crying before she finished the first sentence. "Your brother is devastated," she said. "He put everything into this." He hadn't, actually. What he had put in was about $8,000, which my parents had given him. What he had not put in was any of the actual operational work, which his former partner had handled. I knew this because I had heard the other side of the story from someone who knew the ex-partner. But I said nothing. I listened. I said I was sorry to hear it. "He needs something to get him back on his feet," my mother said. "He's been looking at spaces." I didn't think anything of it. My brother was always looking at spaces. 3 weeks later, he came to see the studio. I thought it was a visit. He texted me the day before, "Hey, can I swing by tomorrow? Want to catch up?" And I said, "Of course. I make coffee." I showed him around. He asked good questions, the kind that made me think maybe he was finally taking something seriously. How much was my lease per month? What was my square footage? Whether the building had boating access. I told him because he was my brother and I didn't think to be suspicious. Why would I be? It was my studio. It had my name on the signage. It had never occurred to me that any of that information would be used against me. 2 days after his visit, my mother called again. "We've been thinking," she said. And we really feel like your brother needs a proper space to launch his new concept. He's thinking about wellness, a wellness studio. And your place, your space is so perfect for it. The location, the layout. We talked to the landlord and he said he'd be open to a conversation about a lease transfer. I want you to understand what I heard in that sentence. Not a request, not even a suggestion. A report of actions already taken. They had already talked to my landlord. My brother had already been researching my building. The conversation they were inviting me to was not one where I had a real choice. It was one where I was expected to nod and make it easy. You've been doing this for a few years, my mother continued. You could start fresh somewhere else. Your brother is really struggling. I was quiet for a long time. I'll think about it, I said. I hung up and I sat in my car in the parking garage beneath my building for 20 minutes. I was not thinking about what to do. I already knew what I was going to do. I was deciding how. Here's the thing about my studio that my brother did not know, and that my mother did not know, and that my landlord apparently had not mentioned when they called him. The commercial lease I had signed was in my business name, and it had a clause, one I had insisted on during negotiation. Because my attorney at the time had advised me that any sublease, assignment, or transfer of the lease required not only the landlord's written approval, but a formal consent agreement signed by me as the original lessee, with 30 days' notice. You could not simply transfer my lease. I had to agree to transfer my lease. I did not mention this to my mother. What I did instead was call my attorney, a woman I'd worked with since I opened the studio. I explained the situation. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "What do you want the outcome to be?" "I want my studio," I said, "and I want this to stop happening." She told me what she could do. I told her to do it. Over the next 10 days, I said nothing to my family. I responded to my mother's text about normal things, a recipe she sent, a photo of the dog. My brother texted me once, a cheerful message about how excited he was to work together on the space. I sent back a thumbs-up emoji. That was all. During those 10 days, my attorney filed a formal notice with my landlord clarifying the lease terms and my rights under the agreement. She sent a letter to my brother, certified mail, informing him that any entry into the premises without my explicit written permission constituted trespassing. She helped me document the existing condition of the studio, photographs, a third-party inspection report, a written inventory of all equipment and furnishings. And then I went to Austin for a conference I'd already registered for 6 weeks earlier. I was gone for 4 days. I told Pete and Zoe I'd be out of office. I told them if anything unusual happened at the studio to document it and call me immediately. I did not tell them why. On the second day of the conference, Zoe sent me a video. My brother was in the studio. He had a woman with him I didn't recognize and 2 men carrying what looked like commercial shelving units. He was pointing at the walls. He was talking about opening up the space. One of the men had a pry bar. I watched the video 3 times. Then I called Pete. "Are you there?" I asked. "I'm outside," he said. His voice was tight. "They wouldn't let me in." "Your brother said his name was on the lease now." "It isn't." "I know that, but I didn't know if I should call the police or—" "Call them," I said. "Tell them you have an unauthorized entry in a commercial property and the leaseholder is out of state. Give them my attorney's number. She's expecting a call." Pete was quiet for a second. "You knew this might happen." "I hoped it wouldn't," I said. "But yes." What happened next I know partly from Pete, partly from the police report, and partly from a live stream my brother had started on his personal social media, apparently to document the before footage of his new space. That live stream became the most useful thing he ever did for me. The police arrived within 20 minutes. My brother told them he had permission from the property owner. The officer asked for documentation. My brother did not have any, because there was none. My attorney's letter was sitting in whatever pile of mail he hadn't opened, and my landlord, when reached by phone, confirmed that no transfer had been executed. My brother was asked to leave. He did not go quietly. He told the officer that his sister, me, was jealous of his vision and was sabotaging him. He said our parents had arranged everything. He said the landlord had told him it was fine. None of this was true, and none of it was provable, and the officer was not interested in family dynamics. He was interested in the lease, and the lease said my name. My brother left. But before he did, he turned to Pete and said, very clearly on the live stream that was still running, "This isn't over. She's going to sign this over whether she wants to or not." That sentence, delivered on camera to several hundred viewers, was the moment he handed me everything I needed. My attorney filed for a temporary restraining order the following morning, citing the documented entry, the police report, and the recorded threat. It was granted by end of day. I came home from Austin on Thursday evening. I went straight to the studio. Pete had left the lights on for me. Everything was intact. They hadn't had time to do real damage. Just a few scuff marks on the walls near the door where the shelving had been brought in. Zoe had photographed all of it. I sat in my studio for a long time that night, in the dark, just listening to the building settle around me. 14-foot ceilings. Original hardwood. Mine. The next few weeks were not quiet. My mother called and called. My father, who rarely called twice. They used every word in the script. I was selfish. I was cruel. I was destroying the family. I had more than enough. And couldn't I just share? My brother sent a long text message that I screenshot and sent to my attorney without responding to. My mother showed up at the studio once, and Pete told her I wasn't available, which was true. I was there in the back office, listening to her voice in the lobby. I want to be honest, that was hard. Not because I doubted myself, but because she sounded like my mother. The same voice that had driven me to school, that had sat with me when I had the flu at age 9, that had told me she was proud of me at my college graduation. Standing in the back of my own building, listening to that voice and not walking out to her, took everything I had. I didn't walk out. The TRO hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. My brother retained an attorney, my mother told me this, in a voicemail that was equal parts threat and plea. His attorney apparently argued that our mother had acted as an informal agent on my behalf in initiating the landlord conversation, and that I had tacitly agreed by not immediately objecting. My attorney's response to that argument was concise and not particularly gentle. The judge agreed with her. The restraining order was made permanent, pending a full civil hearing. My brother's attorney then attempted to file a counterclaim, alleging I had tortiously interfered with a business opportunity. That claim was dismissed at the pre-trial stage. I was awarded attorney's fees. Total fees awarded, $6,200. When the order came through, I sent my mother a single text. It said, "I love you, but I will not be answering calls about this anymore. When you're ready to talk about something else, I'm here." She didn't respond for 11 days. On the 12th day, she called and asked if I wanted to come for dinner. She didn't mention my brother. I said I'd think about it. I'm still thinking about it. Here's what I want you to understand about the part that comes after. The part after the legal win. After the TRO, after the fee award, after the live stream and the police report, and all of it. People expect that part to feel like victory, and in some ways it does. But mostly it feels like grief, which is strange because I didn't lose anything. I kept everything I built. What I lost was the version of my family I had been holding onto in my head. The one where my parents were fair and just hadn't noticed the imbalance yet. The one where my brother was going to grow up eventually and see what he'd done. I'd been carrying those stories for a long time. Setting them down was necessary. It was also heavy. Zoe gave me a card the week after everything settled. She'd had Pete and the building's mail carrier, a guy named Ron who had been on our block for 12 years. Sign it too. It said simply, "We're glad you stayed." I put it on the wall behind my desk, where I can see it when I'm on calls. The studio is doing well. We took on 2 new commercial clients this quarter, and I hired a 3rd designer. Someone fresh out of school who reminds me a little of myself at 24, cautious and hungry and trying to prove something. I'm trying to make sure she doesn't have to prove it the hard way. My brother's wellness studio concept has not materialized. I know this because he posted about pivoting on social media 4 months ago, which in his vocabulary means starting over. My parents have not offered me another family member's dream at the expense of mine, at least not yet. The lease on my studio was renewed in April, 5 more years. My name, only my name, on every page. I didn't tell anyone when I signed it. I just drove to the studio early that morning, before Zoe and Pete arrived, and I stood in the middle of the floor in the quiet, in the light coming through the old windows that face east, and I let myself feel it, the particular satisfaction of something that is entirely yours, that you built with your own hands and defended with everything you had. That is still standing. That feeling doesn't have a name exactly, but it's real, and nobody can take it from you if you're paying attention. If you're in something like this right now, if you're watching someone try to dismantle what you've built, while the people who should protect you hold the door open for them, I want to say something directly to you. You don't have to fight in the way they expect you to fight. You don't have to show up in the doorway swinging. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is already be 3 steps ahead with documentation and a good attorney and a restraining order waiting in the wings while they assume you don't see what's happening. They assumed I wouldn't see it. I saw all of it. I just waited until they were too far in to back out. I've had a lot of time to think about what actually happened. Not the legal part, not the taro or the fee award or any of the paperwork, but the part underneath all of it. The part that explains how a person ends up standing in a parking lot in Austin, watching their brother gut their studio on a live stream, and feeling, of all things, calm. Here's what I think. I think the way people treat you over a long period of time teaches you something, whether you want to learn it or not. My brother didn't wake up one morning and decide to take my studio. He had been practicing for that moment for years. Every time I paid a bill he should have paid, every time I said yes when I meant no, every time I let the family narrative, "Your brother is struggling, you have more than enough," go unchallenged. He had learned from experience that I would absorb it, that I was the kind of person who absorbed things. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had quietly stopped being that person about 2 years before any of this happened. I stopped the moment I signed that lease. Something about putting my name, just my name, on something real made me understand that I had been confusing love with compliance for a very long time. Those are not the same thing. Intelligence in a situation like mine isn't about being smarter than the people trying to take from you. Honestly, my brother is not a stupid person. He's charming, he's persuasive, he can read a room. What he couldn't do was think past the next 30 days. He saw my studio and he saw an opportunity, and he moved on it without asking what I might have already put in place, without wondering why I said, okay, so easily, without considering that a person who built something from nothing has probably thought carefully about how to protect it. That's the gap. Not intelligence in the abstract, but the kind of thinking that looks ahead, the kind that files a lease clause in year 1 because an attorney told you it might matter someday, the kind that, when trouble shows up, doesn't react immediately but asks, what outcome do I actually want, and what's the most direct path to it? And then there's the question of what you're willing to hold on to, not just legally, emotionally. Standing in the back office, listening to my mother's voice in the lobby and not walking out. That took something I don't have a clean word for, not stubbornness. More like clarity. I knew that if I walked out there, the conversation would pull me into 30 years of history and I would lose the thread of what I was trying to protect. So I stayed where I was. That's not coldness. That's knowing yourself well enough to know what you can and can't afford in a given moment. Pete and Zoe showed up every day through all of it. Ron, who has walked our block for 12 years, signed a card. Those are small things. But I think the people who stay, the ones who just keep showing up quietly, without drama, without asking anything from you, those people are worth more than we say out loud. I didn't build the studio alone. I built the legal protection alone, but I kept it standing with people like them around me. What I know now is this. The things you build with real effort, over real time, with no shortcuts, those things tend to hold, and the attempts to take them, made by people who have never built anything themselves, tend to collapse under their own weight. You don't always have to fight. Sometimes you just have to have done the work early, quietly, before anyone was paying attention. I did the work. That's the whole story, really.